Okay, today we're going to talk about menopause. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist. I'm a girl who is going through this phase of life, a woman who is going through this phase of life, who feels like I was not really prepared for what I'm going through. I feel like out of all of the different things we go through as women, this is the phase that we talk the least about. And there's a lot of medical information out there, but not nearly as much as there should be. I have had loads of symptoms. I have been confused. I have felt alone. And the only reason I'm making this video is to share what I've been going through, not to tell you, how to overcome or how to do fantastic things and just get through this period of your life, but more just by way of maybe someone who is feeling discouraged and confused will watch it and go, I thought it was just me. So that's it. And I'm really glad that you're here. So as I film this video, yesterday, one of my kids left, meaning not left for college, not left for a season, like put his freaking bed in the back of a U-Haul with all of his belongings and moved to a home of his own. I'm very lucky because it's just on the other side of town. I will see him, but there's a finality to that. Like watching him drive away in the U-Haul, yesterday I was a complete disaster. I'm handling it a little bit better today. But all of these grief events that pile on in this phase of life that happens to coincide with the things that are going on with our bodies is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of an unfortunate series of events. That was a great book series and movie series, by the way, but it got me to thinking about all of the weird things I've been through in this phase of life called perimenopause, menopause, and then eventually, the terminology is weird. Like, let's get that out of the way before I get into anything else. And full disclosure, this may not be a really well organized video because I am just talking from my heart here. And I did do a loose outline, but I might be all over the place also because brain fog is also part of the deal. When you are in perimenopause, those are the years leading up to menopause, and evidently that can last for a very long time. Technically, you're not in menopause until you haven't had an actual period for 12 months. And that is kind of odd too, because if you're like me and maybe you've had a partial hysterectomy, so you don't really know where you are in the process, or maybe I had a uterine ablation. By the way, if you want a whole video on that, you can go and check my video out right here. Best decision I ever made. I don't really have periods. I'll have spotting, but I don't really have periods anymore. So it's been a little tricky to figure out where I am in the process. And bonus, your doctor can't really tell. Estrogen tests are notoriously unreliable in determining where you are. They can do a test that determines if your eggs are still dropping and those kinds of things, like with the follicles, blah, blah, blah. It's wildly inaccurate in terms of determining where you are. So I thought, delusionally, that I would go to my OBGYN and she would take a blood test and then she could say, okay, so here's where you are in the menopause process and this is how much longer you can expect. That is not true. And every woman's path with this is a little bit different. And bonus, very few OBGYNs receive specialized training in this area of medicine. And the first symptoms that I got were way back in my early 40s when I started having absurdly heavy periods. And I went to a male doctor and he said, this is what happens from now until your period stops and you just have to get used to it. And then I got a different doctor and that's what set me on my whole path of finding out that I had hypothyroidism, that I had Hashimoto's. Again, I've talked about Hashimoto's a lot, so I'm also incorporating the fact that I have autoimmune disease into all of this. I am by nature a researcher, so I have read many, many books, and I will put as many resources as I can fit down in the description box for you. None of which would I say are like the be all and end all, but books that have really influenced me. Books about trauma and healing, which we're going to get into a little bit. And yes, it is all related. Books about the physical part of menopause, Also, books about like midlife and what this season of life means, not only for women, but also for men. There's a couple of books I've read about that were really impactful for me. But this is a big deal time of your life. So I want to kind of set out by saying that first. It feels like a big deal because it is a big deal. A lot of us, when we get to midlife, there's this like strong realization that whatever choices we've made up until now, if there's anything that we would like to correct or rectify or change, time is running out for us to make those changes, whether they be relational changes, boundary changes, vocational changes. And then along with that comes regrets, things that we realize we've done that cannot be undone, that we maybe wish we had done differently. And so it's kind of a mind bending thing, right? Like there's so much going through my head at any given time. So I want to break it down into mind, body, and spirit, because I think that will help me kind of explain what's happened with me most effectively. And I'm still going to be all over the place. So it's just the way it is. So let's start with mind, because this is the part that has surprised me the most. I have always been an anxious person. That is literally like would throw up before school, would throw up before going to Disneyland. Like I have always had an anxious stomach, an anxious mind, an anxious heart. It's just kind of how I came into the world. I did have some environmental factors that did not help with that, which I will not get into, but I have anxiety issues. Menopause, instead of what I thought would happen is, oh, I'm older and I'm wiser, and so I will get less freaked out by things and I will have less anxiety, has inexplicably heightened all of that. I am more anxious than I've ever been. I am more fretful than I've ever been. And the only difference between doing it now and the way that I went through it when I was younger is that when I was younger, I think I didn't recognize it for what it was. Now, at least when I am in those anxious moments, I have better coping mechanisms. I have like a broader understanding of what's actually going on. I've done a lot of study of myself and my Enneagrams and all of that. I know what helps, I know what doesn't help. But the truth is, even with all the therapy that I've been through and all of the book reading and all of the gathering of the tools, it still feels crappy. The anxiety, like for instance, right now as I'm sitting here, I'm flying tomorrow. I'm leaving on a great trip. Everything is happy and good, but I'm already feeling that travel anxiety start to build up. And I just can't express how frustrating it is, because you really feel like, girl, you should know better. Like you're a grown woman, you've raised 3 children, you've had a couple of different careers, you're now in your 3rd career as far as that's concerned. You have no reason to be this anxious, and yet the inexplicable anxiety is really and truly the worst it's ever been. Worst it's ever been. And I know that that is hormonal related, and I think there's some other factors at play as well, including just crap that's going on in this phase of life. Everything from, a lot of anxiety about money and retirement, and are we going to have enough money? You do feel this kind of like, I'm in the last of my earning years and I better figure it out. I better get as much as I can, because at some point, y'all, my career now is making videos. There may come a time when I'm literally not camera ready anymore. And let's not even get into all the pressure that women feel to stay looking 25 for their entire lives. I'll probably just keep talking to the camera until someone, makes me stop, because I love communicating and I love sharing about what's going on with me. And does that make me a narcissist? Maybe. But although my therapist said, if you're concerned with being a narcissist, you probably aren't one, which I find maybe too much comfort in, but I digress. I have a lot of anxiety. The anxiety causes me not to be able to sleep, and we'll get into sleep disturbances when we get to the body piece of things. It also causes me to either not have an appetite or be super hungry. I've always self-soothed with food, and again, getting into the body part, it's kind of such a load of crap, because your body is not metabolizing things the same way, and yet the very things that you would love to use for comfort, it backfires on you, and your body doesn't, you can't just, take the weight off like you used to be able to, and all of that. But my mind is not settled, and I am finding peace more elusive than it's ever been. And I'm striving for this thing where, like, I picture myself as a 50 some odd year old woman, spending a lot of time looking at trees and birds, and instead I toil, and I circle the drain, and I go through all these doomsday scenarios, and I worry about the environment, and I worry about money, and I worry about my children, and I worry about my husband. And I used to worry when we were young. I would worry that our marriage wouldn't last, and now I'm worried about him friggin' dying on me. Like, I get myself so worked up and so upset. And it's just a big old train of crazy. And all of the things that used to work don't work as well anymore. They still work. Like, exercise as a coping mechanism still works. Allowing myself many more hours to sleep than is actually what I need, so that if I wake up 6 times in the night, I still can cobble together 7 hours of sleep, really works. But the things aren't working as well as they used to. So I'm definitely going to be talking to my doctor about that piece of things, but tons of anxiety, tons of panic attacks, tons of worry, tons of stress. Okay, so that's the mind piece of things. And there's other things too, but I think that's probably, there's benefits. Like, I don't get as angry as I used to. I've definitely dealt with that. But yeah, loads of anxiety. So now let's move to the body piece of things. So certainly, I have not experienced a lot of weight gain, a little bit. I did move to intermittent fasting, which I've come to believe is not actually magic. It's just that it makes me eat less. That's all there is to it. I have a type of mind that works really well with compartmentalization. So if you tell me I can only eat between 11 and 7, that's all I'm going to eat. And I'm super busy. And so it just limits the amount of calories I'm eating. I don't think that fasting for periods of time is magic. I just don't. I think it's kind of a bunch of hooey. But the schedule piece of the eating does help me with self-control, does help me with portion control. The reality for me, I probably eat a third of the amount that I was eating this time 5 years ago to maintain the same weight. Now, I do have a checkup coming up, so I am going to be having my thyroid levels checked, because that's always a possibility, but that's a lot. Like, that's a huge difference. And I'm eating enough that I'm not, like, falling over from weakness or anything like that. And I really watch, like, not having disordered eating and all of the things. But the calorie restriction that I have to do to maintain weight is stupid. And I think that's an issue. It's not fun. It's not fun at all, actually. So yeah, that's going on. Other issues in my body, certainly I have, like, sorry, I didn't put my phone on silent. Certain issues in my body that have become exacerbated have been things like, my arthritis in my knees, things like that. I have found, and I think this is super fascinating, and I had read about this a while ago, I actually don't do so well with intense periods of exercise. My body seems to function much better with frequent, more moderate exercise. So for instance, instead of going out and doing a 3-mile run once a day, doing a 1.5 mile walk in the morning with the dogs and a 1.5 mile walk in the evening with the dogs, and maybe like a 20-minute rowing workout on, like, my hard workout days, my body is responding much better to that than to intense extreme exercise. And when I say my body's responding better, yes, of course, I'm talking about weight maintenance, but that's not even really why I exercise. My body's responding better in that seems to lead to less inflammation, less pain, easier recovery, all of the things. So I've really shifted from what when I was young, I would always do, like, a huge workout in the morning and then just regular activity during the day. Breaking up the activity to where I'm moving all throughout my day is really helping. I work for myself, so that's a huge benefit, is that I can do that. I can go do, a 15-minute rowing workout over my lunch break, which a lot of people couldn't do. But I've definitely had to have some trial and error in figuring out what works. So that piece of things I have learned how to do better. But yes, I mean, the body piece that's probably the most annoying is that now when I eat certain foods, I hurt the next morning. So although I don't have celiac, I don't practice any kind of like gluten-free or anything, if I eat a lot of simple carbs and sugars, then I have a lot of joint inflammation. And that, yes, is to do with Hashimoto's, but I also think it's related to menopause. And the really fun thing is there's no way to know which of these things is menopause related and which is Hashimoto's hypothyroidism related, and kind of it's all in one big thing. And your doctor's not going to be able to help you here, because doctors, and a lot of you guys have shared this with me, especially on my Hashimoto's video, doctors will only address symptoms that they can do something about. So kind of these generalized, aches and pains and fatigue and all of these things, unless it's like a tangible thing like your thyroid levels that they can fix, they don't really know what to do with you. And so you have to be your own advocate. You have to figure out nutritionally, lifestyle, how do you handle all that? The other thing with my body is just not responding to the same things in the same way, and having to learn different coping mechanisms for stress and anxiety, and having to practice things like meditation, which I probably should have mentioned in the mind part, but it's kind of actually goes into all three. I've been doing Apple Fitness meditations. I've been practicing some really simple meditations in my backyard. There's one that I really like that's just about where you focus your gaze. It's super rudimentary, like meditation 101, but you focus on like the furthest thing that you can focus on, and then you slowly let your gaze come closer and closer and closer to the closest thing, and then you do the same thing back out again, back in, and then back out, and you breathe the whole time. And that's been super helpful to kind of help center me, and seems to be helping. But yeah, my body just feels different. Weight is in different places, and I wake up and I feel different, and it's hard to reconcile, because I still feel, and I hear people say this all the time, and I'm trying in this video not to be super cliche, but I still feel exactly the same behind these eyes as I did when I was 8 years old and 10 and 12 and 15. And one of my favorite books is This Chair Rocks, and she talks about ageism, and she said, don't think of it as you're 50, think about it as you are inhabiting all of the ages that you've ever been. So I am 12, I am 15, I am 24, I am 51. I don't know why that makes me emotional, but I am the 12-year-old girl that I was is still here. And the 30-year-old girl that I was is still here. And the 50-year-old girl that I was is here. And I am all of those things at the same time. And it helps for me that I have friends that span all of the ages. I have several friends that are way older than me, and I have friends that are way younger than me. And it brings this sort of sense of all of the things happening at the same time that does help me settle into my body. But you're going to age, and you're going to look different, and you're going to get wrinkles, and your hair is going to get gray, and that is the process. And to deny it, or to use words like anti-aging, we're not going to, well, you do what you want. I don't find that helpful. I find that serves a misogynistic culture that wants women to be 25 and in bikinis for the rest of their lives. But this emphasis on all a woman wants is to be perceived as young is a disservice to ourselves. I want to be what I am, whatever it is I look like, which, by the way, 99% of which has to do with your genetics, and not unless you get surgery, which I'm not going to do because I don't have money for that. And if I were to spend money on that, I would have to take money away from something else, like, I don't know, paying off our mortgage or retirement. And I'm just not going to do it. And people in my life love me for who I am, and the aging is part of the process. So it's not that there aren't ways to look like you're not the age that you are, even if you don't have genetics on your side. But I get exhausted from that, and I feel like the pursuit of looking younger is just a waste of our time. And I have better stuff to do. Yeah, I just have better stuff to do. So another body thing would be hot flashes. I know that's very cliche. Everyone talks about that. And sleep disturbances. Those have probably been the two that are the most annoying, especially like hot flashes when you're in public are not fun. But for me, it's more like the night sweats and the fact that I always was such a great sleeper. And now I wake up multiple times in the night. I don't love that. I don't love that I have to change my sheets because I like literally sweat through them. Now in the video is probably a really good time to say, please do not put down in the comments your herbal supplement person. Like if that works for you, I am so happy for you, but I will be sharing these symptoms with my medical doctor and we will come up with a plan. I really kind of get fatigued from all that because everyone wants to sell you something to fix it. And the truth is, I just don't think anything fixes it. I think definitely hormone replacement therapy can work. I will do that if and when I decide with my doctor that it's time, but this is not a one-size-fits-all situation any more than any other time of our lives has been a one-size-fits-all situation, right? So anyone that tells you, every woman who's going through menopause, this is the key, they're not telling you the truth. And they're either not telling you the truth because they're delusional themselves, or they're not telling you the truth because they're selling you something. And really, the whole anti-aging industry is billions and billions of dollars. And there are so many ads pushing us to, if we just buy this one thing, all of our problems will disappear, which really is the crux of all advertising. So just, let's just be smarter than that, because our bodies, we need to take things seriously, because we are entering into a very serious time of our lives where our cancer risk is higher than it's ever been. Our stroke risk is higher than it's ever been. It's ridiculous, the list of things that I am at higher risk for now than I was when I was 35. There's a tendency for women to just like grin and bear it. Don't do that. Let's go to our doctors. Let's normalize that. Let's treat ourselves as seriously now as we did when we were pregnant and carrying our children, or when we were, younger and worried about fertility. This is a big deal. We need to be taking great care of our bodies. So that's kind of the body piece and where I am with all that. And now let's talk about the soul and spirit side of things. This is where I feel a lot of us have so much work to do. And as a person who has always been very spiritual, there have been some things that have bubbled up for me in regards to past trauma, some of which I have had to very publicly deal with. I won't go into all the details, partly because I'm not legally able to share all of the details, but I was a victim of assault when I was young. I kept it a secret until I was 47. And when the story came out, I was part of the Church 2 movement, and there were dozens of women that had the same experience with the same person. And I think what gave me the courage to finally deal with it was the soul piece of the menopause process, where you almost feel like you're being boiled and like all of the impurities are rising to the top. And so all of the things that you've never dealt with, you have two choices. And Brene Brown talks about this. By the way, if you haven't read Brene Brown, she's another one of my true, she has changed my life. Her writings have changed my life, I should say. But things boil to the surface. That may be memories from your childhood, unresolved trauma from your childhood. That might be a lack of boundaries with people in your life. That might be toxic relationships that need to be purged from your life. I have also done that, and it's been very painful, but yet has changed everything. And I'm gonna put some resources for you about that down in the description box. By the way, if you guys don't know how to get to the description box on videos, if you're looking on mobile, there's a little V to the right of the title of the video. And if you click on that, the description box will open up. I find a lot of women don't know how to ask, they'll hear me say it's in the description box and they don't know how to get there. And I don't feel like YouTube does a great job of showing you where it is. So anyway, that's where it is. But it has affected my very soul. My faith has changed. My views on church has changed. So many things that I was so sure of have been upended for me, and all in very positive ways, but my soul has been churned and my spirit has been churned. And I think at this phase of life, you choose whether you are going to address those things that boil to the surface, or are you going to shove them down and push them aside and pretend that they don't exist, and pretend that you're not feeling what you're feeling, and pretend that you don't have this thing that you know you need to deal with. It is never clearer, I think, for most women, and I know this is certainly true of me, what is looking you square in the eye. The dragons that you have to slay, they appear in midlife in a way that is so vibrant. They will show up in your dreams. They will show up in people that you meet. They will show up in conversations that you will have. And I almost feel it's as though God themselves is coming down and saying to me personally, this is the season in which you are to deal. If you deal with it now, it becomes part of your work until you die. If you ignore it now, if you leave that path of self-healing and working through the things, you are losing your opportunity to ever deal with it. And it feels like to me a crucial life or death moment. And I know that sounds so dramatic, but I really believe in the tie between our emotional minds and our physical bodies. And when we store trauma in our bodies, that bad crap happens. And I want to give my body the best chance it can have. And in order for my body and my mind to have the best chance they can have, I got to work on my soul. I got to work on my spirit. I've got to work through trauma. I've got to work through things from my childhood. I have to do the work. I've done a lot of that work on my own. I've done a lot of that work in therapy, and it has transformed how I view the world, and it has helped. It's not fixed. Like I've long ago let go of the idea that working through my trauma somehow fixes things. It doesn't, but it helps me identify the why, and it makes me better able to face the future. And that's really all any of this is, right? That is the process. Okay. So here is the takeaway from this video. I do not know what I'm doing, and I am giving it my best shot. And I just want to give you the freedom to be on this journey with me. If you guys want more videos about this process, like as I talk to my doctor, if I do hormone replacement therapy, what that looks like, all of the things. And we're still going to talk about all the other things too. We're still going to talk about, I hope to talk soon more about kind of my fashion style during this period of life, because I think that's important too, right? Like we are expressing ourselves in whole new ways and reinventing who we are. And it almost feels to me like if we can agree together that this is really damn hard, we can also then fully rejoice in the positive parts of it. In the fact that you can become kind of fully who you were meant to be. And we can do it right now in the middle of our lives when we still have lots of decades left and lots to contribute to the world, to ourselves, to our families. And yeah, we have a lot of life still left to live. So thank you for indulging me today. I hope no matter where you are in this process that this has been helpful and encouraging to you along your own path. I promise to share what I can as I learn it, and you're not alone, and we're in this together. All right, whatever you're doing, I hope you're finding joy, and I'll see you next time. Bye.